at 3:06 p.m. Eastern time. And so, yeah, everyone go into the description. You can go find Claire, all the websites, all the writings, her Twitter. And in there, I put at the top of it is the link to a video you sent me. It's about 40 minutes, if I believe, about, as you said, it's the Sound of Freedom meeting what's happening at the southern border, and how, never before has a judge ever declared that we are under an invasion. And then it's also not something as it's like if you blamed the Iraq war on Obama or Trump. It's like, well, they inherited it. This is different in that you have this guy going, the safest border we ever had was under the last president, and now not through even one term, it is now the worst we've ever seen. So that's a pretty clear-cut twist in this scenario, which I think you could then argue rationally that, well, this is the result of one president. But Claire, could you maybe kind of expand on that and tell the people?
Yeah. So, thank you for covering this topic, Tommy. It's so important, and it's so timely at a time when the blockbuster film Sound of Freedom finally got released and is just racking up the ticket sales in the movie theaters. Sound of Freedom, and that is the story about a former ICE DHS officer, agent, Tim Ballard, who is assigned down in Latin America, I think it's Colombia, and he realizes, it really hits him down there, how prevalent, how widespread, and how massive the child sex trafficking business is. And the movie itself, which I have not yet seen, but I'm going to, focuses in on the story of one little boy whom Tim Ballard, as portrayed in the film, sets out to rescue from the clutches of child sex trafficking, and then finds out, after he succeeds with the little boy, that there's his sister still caught up in it, and so he goes to rescue her too. And again, as I say, I haven't seen the film yet. I plan to shortly, but I think what happens in the end is both those children are rescued, thanks to Tim Ballard, who quit his job actually to do that rescue, to enter into the dark underworld of child sex trafficking, which is a global business, but to bring it up to our own border, apparently and horribly, Americans are among the biggest consumers of child sex pornography in the world. And so our film, the one that you just saw a little while ago, Tommy, which is at our website, defendtheborder.org, is called Death County and the River of Broken Dreams. And this is a documentary about 43 minutes long, as you say, which picks up the story in a way of the trafficking, of the child trafficking, the human trafficking, of others besides children, women, girls, that brings that trafficking into and across the entire United States. So Death County is actually Brooks County in southern Texas. It borders right on Mexico and the river, the Rio Grande. And of course, the River of Broken Dreams is the Rio Grande. And so I think our film, in a way, picks up and carries the story forward into America, into the United States, and not just what happens as effects on American communities that are overrun, to use the title of Todd Bensman's recent book, but it focuses on the migrants, the illegals themselves, who face an incredible journey, hardships. They're preyed upon by criminals along the way. Women and girls and boys are raped repeatedly. They get to the river, which has very dangerous currents, as I understand it, and those currents sometimes sweep these people away. They're drowned. And then for those who actually do come across illegally, not going through ports of entry or turning themselves into CBP, Customs and Border Protection, they're trying to make passage across private land often, but rugged, remote, dangerous open desert land, and many of them don't make it. Either because the coyotes, the cartel, guides who bring them across, abandon them if they're hurt or sick, or somehow they can't keep up. They're too young, they're too old, whatever. They can't keep up with the group. They just abandon them, and never mind all of those that we're hearing stories about, reports about now, over and over, of these illegals trapped inside of steel boxes, tractor trailer compartments, locked in by the coyotes to bring them north, and then these poor people are found. They're found dead. They're found dead in the trucks. They're found dead in the desert. Ranchers in our film, Death County and the River of Broken Dreams, ranchers like Dr. Michael Vickers, for example, who's featured in the film, talk about finding bodies on their property, on their ranch all the time. And this is the tragedy that our film tries to portray, along with, and kind of as a pickup and a sequel on Sound of Freedom, that's seeing such enormous success in the movie theaters right now.
Just for kind of like a super big picture, can any of this happen without some sort of government complicity? If not,
no, it cannot.
At the very least, on the worst end, you'd have them involved doing it. At the very least, you'd have them turning a blind eye.
It's involvement. It's direct involvement, and here's how it goes.
Okay.
The U.S. taxpayer pays our taxes to the U.S. government. The Department of State uses some of those taxpayer dollars to fund not only programs to encourage, aid, abet, and support and finance illegals from countries all the way as far south as South America, on up through Central America and so forth, but also to fund NGOs, non-governmental organizations like Catholic Charities, for example, which themselves are dealing directly with the cartels and which provide things like clothing and food, water, shoes, backpacks, oh yes, and debit cards to use for purchases along the route, and maps to mark out that route from Central or South America on up north to our border. These things are being provided, as well as camps, way stations and camps for the illegals along the way. That's our taxpayer dollars are helping to fund all of that, directly. And that is not even beginning to talk about the policies of the Biden administration and the Alejandro Mayorkas Department of Homeland Security, under which are ICE and CBP, right? Not even talking about the policies at the border, which ended the stay in Mexico policy, have returned to catch and release policies, sometimes using the cover, a very flimsy cover of humanitarian parole into America, have done away with, at the end of May this year, May 2023, done away with the Trump era policy of DNA testing of purported claimed family groups to see if those children really do belong or are related to those adults that are bringing them across the border. And no enforcement of removal by ICE of illegals from the United States, and no enforcement inside the United States of the E-Verify system, which employers are supposed to use to check up about the citizenship status, the legal status at least, of people they're about to hire for their companies. No enforcement of any of those things I just mentioned. So yes, this is a huge change from during the Trump era years of the Trump administration. It is absolutely deliberate. It is methodical. It is planned. I don't know what else to say. This is all on purpose, and they do not care about the deaths at the river, at the border. We haven't talked about the rape trees yet, but we can. We're not even beginning to talk about, the deaths in the desert, or the children who are then sold into sex slavery or sold into forced labor, which they're not even supposed to be, working. Found kids, 9, 10 years old, in meatpacking plants in the middle of the night. All of that is known to the administration, known to the Department of Homeland Security, but they don't care.
Can you expand on the rapes?
Yeah, so I wrote about this some time ago. I think it was last fall, maybe October of 2022, about the rape trees. So these are on the U.S. side of the border, and that's how we know about them, often found on private land again, these farmers and ranchers' land. And these are trees where the cartel thugs hang the lingerie, the underwear, of the women and girls they've raped. And it's kind of a bragging tree, maybe you call it, and there's even almost like a competition among them for who has the most lingerie hung on the tree. But it's all about the rape of women and girls.
What can realistic, because it's so in your face evil. What can realistically be done? I mean, like, I'm sure we can sit here and, we can get up in arms and people are retweeting the Sound of Freedom and it's like, rah, rah, but, at the end of the day, I'm still just sitting here in a chair in an apartment building. Like, what can realistically be done?
Yeah, a few things. Let's start at the local level because that's where I think this all begins.
It's where everything starts.
For everybody. Please go to the website, defendtheborder.org. Watch our film, Death County and the River of Broken Dreams. And if you have the ability and the desire to do so, please hit the donate button, because what we would like to do is to bring our documentary film to audiences around the United States. We did have the opportunity to show it in the U.S. Capitol building on Thursday, July 13th, but we'd like to take it to other audiences, private audiences, public audiences all across the United States, and we need help to do that. So please hit that donate button if you can and would like to. Then the other thing, of course, is elections. It really matters a lot, for example, whom you vote for sheriff, for example, because a sheriff is the senior law enforcement official of any county in the United States. So that post really matters. So do your district attorneys. So elections, again, really matter. And I'm talking about local elections. Yes, on up, the ballot, let's say, to your state legislators and on up to Congress itself. That certainly does matter. And of course, presidential elections coming up next year in 2024, that all matters a lot. But start at the local level. If you can host, for example, a showing of our film, let us know. Let Tommy know. Tommy can let me know. If you would like to host in a public space, maybe a library, maybe a church hall, or something like that, host a showing of that film, and some of us could come and answer, Q&A, make some comments, or we could do it by Zoom, whichever way works the best. We could do the things like that. But then at the top level, the things I mentioned just a minute ago, all those policies of the Trump era administration that the Biden administration has thrown out the window. And it begins with stay in Mexico, end the catch and release policy that Trump ended and Biden reinstated, restore DNA testing at the border for purported or claimed family units with children, make sure those kids really are related to those adults, enforce inside the United States ICE removal, ICE deportation of illegals, and then finally enforce inside the United States the E-Verify system that employers are by law obligated to do, but don't do because it's not enforced. So, at your local level, you too can, ask your representatives, are you aware of these things? Have you seen these films? Both of the films, Sound of Freedom and ours. What are you doing about E-Verify? What are you doing, Mrs. Representative, about encouraging the observance of U.S. law for the deportation of illegals across the country? Are you aware of the child sex trafficking that goes on in this country? Be alert for those things. Not that you can stop it yourself, and I would not recommend anybody trying to get involved in tracking down any of that stuff, but to be aware of things that don't seem right, in public spaces, let's say, at a mall. All of these things are, I think, things that local, grassroots American citizen patriots can think about and maybe do.
If you want, I can host the video here. 17,000 subscribers. It's not nothing. I can upload it here. I don't want to rob it. I don't want to rob views from YouTube because I also understand the importance of it's my own dilemma with the podcast is whenever I have a really big episode, I'll see other people clipping it and uploading it, and I get angry because I'm not getting the views. But then ultimately, I'm like it. No such thing as bad, PR. I'll take it. Yeah. So I don't want to rob it of views because I know that it's important. But if you want,
don't think about it like that. I'd welcome that, and so would our team.
I just record it and upload it here. I don't.
Yeah, it's public now. It is at the defendtheborder.org website for anyone who wants to look at it or share it. I think that'd be a great idea. You've got a tremendous audience.
I've got 17,000 here and about 3,000 on Spotify. So combined, that's 20,000 people. If it's, I don't know how.
That's a lot.
I don't know.
Please feel free to go ahead and
sure.
We'd be glad to have that extra, visibility for the film.
Just figured I'd ask. We could do that, and if you wanted, we could do a follow up. We could get people on from it.
I could be there, yeah. And do follow up Q&A with
absolutely.
people.
We could schedule it a week out or something or longer, and I'll just tell people hey, on this day we're going to do a live thing. I can pull up the live chat and people can interact.
That's a great idea. I hadn't even thought about it, but thank you.
Just FYI, playing with fire with live chats, you never know who's going to show up, and you can't.
True.
I'm just letting you know you're going to have.
I know
people,
you can handle it.
I know I can. I'm just you're going to have people who are trolling. You're going to have people asking sincere questions. Then you're going to have people saying, "Hey, I'm in a cartel," and they're going to be just being as rude as they can for the sake of it.
Yeah, I think that's why God made delete buttons.
Yeah. I'm fine with it. I was born and raised in the live era, so it's fine. But we could do that. We could upload it and then be hey. You could really give it some lead time. Be hey, on this day and August 19th at 2 p.m. we're going to do a live chat. I'd be more than happy to.
I think that'd be a terrific idea. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, because again, to me, it always comes down to what can I realistically do? It's a powerless feeling when you see a big problem and you don't really know what to do, and you go, I hope the government fixes it. But I am in kind of a unique spot where I have a bit of an audience, not really anything compared to bigger channels, but it's something nonetheless, and I think that could be cool. I think every little bit helps.
I thank you. I think so too.
Absolutely. And then to kind of pivot from there, we did the rape trees with the child labor, because I vaguely remember, I think in 2010 I had to read the book Fast Food Nation. It's a pretty good book, but there's one section about it that is all about the illegal immigrants that they use to work at the Cargill and Tyson plants, and the way they describe it's horrible. It's they're illiterate, undocumented, and technically they don't exist. So when they were talking about adults, but they're I'm not even kidding. So when they get sucked into the meat grinder machines, like, there's no problem. And you read it and you're like, you think you're reading The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, but it's based in 2010, not 1902. And it adds a whole nother level of evil to say, and their children. So can you maybe expand on that?
And a lot of them are children. Yeah. And remember, we've seen the news reports, I think many people have recently, that even of children maybe paroled into processed into the United States, resettled by Catholic Charities and the NGOs, the number 86,000 of them, this appeared, as I recall, in congressional testimony, 86,000 children are lost. They don't know where they are. They don't know with whom they are with whom they are.
Over what time frame?
86,000, and that's just a number. Who knows how many it really is?
And not that it makes it any better, but over what time frame? Is that per year? Is that per quarter? Per decade?
No, I think that's within the last year or two.
Good Lord.
Fiscal year 22 into now, we're in fiscal year 23.
86,000.
Lost. Unaccounted for. They don't know where they went, because here's what happens. The many times unaccompanied children, right? They'll be at the border, they'll be processed through, given into the hands of an NGO, let's say, and that NGO then finds a sponsor for that child or children, and there's no background check. Nobody knows who these sponsors are, what's their criminal history, if any. But the children are handed over to them. Sometimes multiple children to the same sponsor, and the address is a wildflower field in Nebraska. Things like that have happened. And so that's that number, and again, it's probably larger than that now. But the point of it is that children are handed over to unknown persons who haven't passed a background check. They don't know who they are. And there go the kids. Forced labor, the sex trade. Because remember, every person, including the children who are brought up to and across our southern border by the cartels, owe whichever cartel that is, their passage fee, if you will. And that's what those colored bracelets were about. Mm-hmm. Remember when Ted Cruz had Secretary DHS Mayorkas in Congress, in the Senate, questioning him, and he had the great big photo of a bunch of these colored wristbands, and Mayorkas, of course, lied and said he didn't know what they were. Well, those wristbands denote which cartel how much money is owed. Now, yes, they abandon a lot of them. They throw them away on the Mexican side of the river sometimes. But believe me, the cartels have already checked out who and where their family are back home, wherever home may be. So they're not off scot-free. They don't just escape the cartels. And so going into this forced labor, going into the sex trade, including sex trafficking of children, is the way they're paying it off. Young men may be forced into cartel gangs, MS-13, for example, gangs across the United States. That's how they have to pay off their passage fee. So that's what that's about.
And then I think it's kind of hard to top child sex trafficking, and it is something this isn't all just like, I know Sound of Freedom's huge right now, but if anyone watched this podcast, you can go back to, I think, like summer 2020. As far back as then, I was interviewing people from the Safe House Project, Christy Wells, about just this. This is something I've been kind of like trying to use this platform to whatever extent I can. After that, there's just organ trafficking. So if you can get more comically evil than selling children to be raped, there's organ trafficking, which thus also implies death.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that at all?
Well, the most I know about that really is centered on China and the Communist Party regime in China, which I probably know more about what they do inside of China than I do about the international
Let's
organ
touch on that.
harvesting. But it's the same evil. And of course, inside of China, the regime is doing live victim organ harvesting of regime opponents like Falun Gong, like Christians, like the Uyghurs out in Xinjiang province. But yes, I do know that it's an international trade. Again, organ harvesting, organ trade, also horrific.
What do you mean live? You mean like vivisection?
Yeah, they're alive, and they're removing their liver, their kidney, their whatever it may be. Not that they remain alive, but
well, yeah. I don't know why I had it in my mind that they would anesthetize them.
oh no, 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 no! They're not going to waste that on Falun Gong or Christians or.
They would if
they
would if it increased the quality of the product. If they didn't want the person slashing around, which is just beyond evil, but
just unbelievable horror. And within China, here's the thing: the senior party officials who may become ill with one disease or another have first dibs on organs taken from these Chinese dissident populations, be they Christians or Falun Gong or Uyghurs or whatever. And so the senior officials of the Chinese Communist Party, not only drive and direct and organize the organ harvesting, but they're the recipients of it too.
It's so ghoulish. Yeah. It's like if you read this in a like a World War II propaganda pamphlet, you'd be like, well, this is just, you've kind of gone over the top. It's propaganda. You know those old propaganda things where it was like if you drive solo, you're driving with Hitler, and it was the importance of carpooling to save oil or something. If you saw this, you would say that it's a joke because it's too evil.
It's beyond imagination that humans could do such, be involved in such horrific deeds. It's just unbelievable.
I would go out on a limb and say that it's maybe China's the primary one doing it. I doubt that they're the only ones receiving it. I bet you have wealthy people all over the world who need a connection. Some billionaire's dad needs a kidney or something. They're not going to wait in line.
It may be, although, as I say, I know less about the international trafficking and organ harvesting, and probably less than you do.
Yeah, no. I think I probably know less than you. I'm obviously speculating wildly, but it does and it doesn't matter where it's happening because it creates a market. Yeah. What does it matter if a pedophile watches child porn? Well, you're creating a market. They're not actually acting on it. Well, no, they are. Someone's acting on it by default. I didn't strip mine Africa. What do I do with? Well, yeah, I own a phone, and the phones are made with rare earth minerals. It's by default you are creating the market by the transitive property, right? A equals B, B equals C, A equals C. You are doing that, and it's.
Well, plus the industry already exists if those children are in those films.
God.
They're already captive to that pornography industry.
Has it always? I'm kind of scrambling. Has it always been this bad? Is it just?
I have to say I don't know. I've recently become more aware of these things, and have not spent a lot of time. Perhaps you've spent more time than I have on these particular topics. I became, drawn into the topics and interested in covering them and speaking about them, primarily through my involvement in border issues. That's what brought me to the topics, and that's only in the last couple of years or so, when I realized the interconnections, the linkages between all of this, the trafficking, the child sex trafficking, all of that, please, again, go have a look at defendtheborder.org, because we've posted a lot of articles there, and time permitting, I will submit not just articles, but commentary about them. Brief, a few paragraphs commentary about whatever the story is, I try to do that as much as time permits, and others do that too. So you'll see over the last 3 years, many of these topics being covered there, and that's how I became involved.
Have there been any? I mean, I guess on the topic of like, your efforts aren't for naught. I mean, obviously Michael Yon documenting it on the southern border. My friend Baz, who was in CIA Ground Branch, he and Rick Prado, who were both
Todd Bensman, another one.
Yeah, they were the first to record the illegals and the kids being dropped off by planes and airports around the country in the middle of the night. So I mean, the efforts aren't for nothing. But I mean, is there any good news? Is there? I mean, I guess it's in the social awareness. It's
that's what I would say. Yeah, it's the raising of awareness that will be the beginning of changes in policy, and hopefully at some point changes in elected and appointed officials. But it had to start, with a groundswell at the grassroots level. Because the senior officials were not going to do anything about this. They could care less, could not care less.
I wasn't going to correct you,
just like you say, it is growing, huh?
I said I wasn't going to correct you, but I'm glad you did. Oh. There's some people get so militant. They're like, I could not care less. I mean, the meaning's the same, but
colloquially,
yeah.
Yes. But anyway, the point being that this begins, as with other things, I guess, at the local level with the outrage, the awareness, and then the anger and the outrage at the local level. And I really think that film, The Sound of Freedom, it's been seen now by thousands and thousands of people, and it's still going gangbusters as I understand it. I think this is only the third weekend coming up, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's really, really showing a lot of people across the country, the evil of what's going on with child trafficking. But I hope that also, the ability now to see our film as well will carry that story forward, into our focus on what's going on here at the border and then inside the United States itself.
What is, because I mean, diagnosing something is always the primary spot. You have to, at the very least, right? I mean, that's what they say about Narcotics Anonymous or alcohol, right? It's I have a problem. That's step one. That's always step one. It's almost a meme, but at the very least, identifying it is the first part to accept that it's happening. I mean, right? We're seeing it with COVID now. How I think yesterday there's some report about we're gonna restrict funding to Wuhan because of.
Finally,
it's like, yeah, man, 3 years ago that would get you kicked from YouTube. I know, and now it's like, well, granted, we understand that Wuhan was doing gain of function. It's like, no. You said that 36 months ago. You're a xenophobic Nazi, and now it's, well, granted, and it's so
because it's coming out. And here again, I'll make the point that elections do matter, and Republicans taking control of the U.S. House of Representatives has given the Republican Party and its committee chairman, subcommittee chairman, and members the opportunity to hold hearings and to issue reports. Now, you might say, well, what good does that do? Well, again, it's getting the story out there to average, everyday American citizen patriots who themselves then will take action at the local level and in future elections coming up. So it really does matter. But as we're seeing, as you're saying, it's taken such a long time to gather steam, and it really did take off, I guess, after the Republicans, took control of the House in just January of this year, 2023. So, we're in July now, almost 8 months later.
Yeah. So I guess, it is important to move from it doesn't exist to, all right, it does exist, but we live in an evil world. But, I mean, how creepy is it when you see the marching orders given to every major CNN, New York Times, Rolling Stone, Washington Post, they're all coming out and they're like, this is QAnon like babble, this is a bunch of conspiracy. It's like, dude, man, I it doesn't make it right, but I get you guys have like a psychosis with Trump and everything Orange Man does is bad. I've kind of accepted that. This is another level of delusion, and on one hand,
watching them backtrack is an important step, and it is one more step on the way to confronting this stuff. The absolute utter evil of the human heart that's possible, among the most depraved of human beings. But that acknowledgement finally coming out in lamestream media, as we call it, is another step. Oh, well, maybe sort of, well, we didn't know. Well, it's a necessary next step.
Sure.
It's taking forever, and the children can't wait. Many of them, it's too late for them. But maybe we could save others.
But just to hear people write it off. So, on one hand, on a human level, and it doesn't make it good, I do understand it. I do understand it in that it is a thought process of maybe you don't want to address it. It's so evil. I get that. Sure. The human mind goes, I don't know, you go through a trauma, you find out someone in your family dies. I mean, I know you kind of go numb for a couple days. You're like, that didn't happen. I get it. That's a human response.
Sure.
But so, if you see this, this movie purporting that there's this multi-billion-dollar, tens of billions of dollars human child trafficking, I get where your mind might shut down and you grasp the nearest hanging fruit and you go, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Okay, sure, I get that on a human level. But to continue to go about it and go, no, I don't bite QAnon bait. I don't take, and it's like, dude. And so on one hand, it's either these news corporations are coming out and denying it because it is in vogue, just like it's vogue to call Donald Trump a Nazi. It's fashionable to say this, which is moralless, lacking moral and heartless. On the worst hand, you're getting marching orders from power factions that want you to say this. And why do those power factions want you to say it?
People and groups and institutions in this country involved in it. And the veil is slipping now. The curtain is being drawn back now. And it's being exposed. And that has to happen.
It's just kind of wild that it actually is starting to, I think everyone's always had hunches and inklings in that, just reading any history of the last 100 years, that humans are more evil than you can possibly fathom. But it is so wild that, in the same year that I can pick up my phone and order McDonald's and it'll be here in 20 minutes and I never have to exchange cash or even see the person, the food will just be in the lobby of my building. In this same universe at this same time, that there are shipping crates full of children that are being smuggled so that they can be raped repeatedly, multiple times a day, often for years, and then eventually killed and had their organ. Your brain short circuits.
Yeah.
Because it's divide by
normal
zero.
Human brain, people's brains short circuit for sure. Yeah, we don't want to realize. We don't want to face. Joseph Conrad Kurtz's the horror, right? We who don't live in that world and have never had any connection to that world find it appalling and horrible. But we have to face it if we're going to do away with it. We're going to end it.
You have to face it. And then there's, and I think another reason, and it is applicable to everyone, is you're either saying that this is QAnon bait because you're complicit in it and you are a pedophile and you should burn in hell. The second half is you're human and it's hard to imagine that this is, oh my God, this is real. But then there is something, and it does come down on everyone, is to some degree. If you're at a giant dinner and the bill's split, even if you just got like a cup of ice, you do owe somebody 5 cents. To some degree, by existing in this world, it has happened on your watch. Even if I'm 32, I have a biology degree, I do a podcast. What have I possibly had to do with child trafficking? By living in this world, and it is happening.
Well, once you realize,
once you're aware of it,
you know, we become aware, you know, that the heart of darkness is not just a river in Africa.
Yeah, it's
in the hearts of human beings,
and that's
what Joseph Conrad meant.
That is something that you have to come to terms. And I guess on one, it is maybe almost lightning. And you go, well, it's not your fault because you didn't know about it till now. But now that you do know about it, you are on the hook, even if it just means.
And we jump in and try to do whatever we can do. You in your world, me in mine, and you know, Tom Homan and Tom Trento in our group in ours.
So I guess the good news is you can still do, even if you're just sharing a link to an episode or a movie. It sucks, but you can still do something. But if going forward from here, you plant your feet in the ground and go, it's not happening, it's all conspiracy, now to a degree, no matter how light, you are complicit.
Yeah, absolutely so.
Whew. Well, I'm gonna try to balance my karma sheet, and I'm gonna upload that 43-minute video here, and I will coordinate with you, and we can set something up.
That'd be a great idea.
A live Q&A.
Yeah, be available whenever we want to. Can work out a mutual date to schedule that.
Yeah. I think we should put it out like at least 2 weeks or something, just so people, and I'll just like remind everyone every day, like, hey, 9 days until this thing, so at least get some visibility. But if you want to maybe contact people and defend the border about doing that, just the very idea of it, and then we can get back with the time.
I know that they'll go for it. I don't even have to ask. Of course I'm going to tell them.
All right, beautiful.
But I know that they'll be very much supportive and thankful to you.
Beautiful.
For the idea.
Well, let's get that ball rolling, and yeah, guys, if you go in the description, you can go find the link to the video as well as the website. The website's also in there, and you can go donate. At the very least, go watch the video or share it, and we will get the ball rolling on doing a Q&A. But with that, Miss Clare Lopez, let's wrap this one up.
Okay, thanks, Tommy. Thanks so much.
Thank you, and yeah, guys, thanks for watching. I know this is a difficult episode, but we can start here and just get after it. Nothing else to do but to get after it. So, Claire, thank you. Guys, thank you for watching. Till next time, Miss Lopez.
Recording stopped.
Thank you so much. Peace.